Is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for McKellar.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I don't get to say this enough in this chamber and other places, but I agree with the member for Wills when he says these things. And I want to thank the member for Moore for bringing this to the attention of this parliament, the member for Wills for his contribution, because what he says is absolutely 100% right. This nation, if it is to exist, if it is to have any purpose, if it is to have any reason in this world in which we live, it is that we must demand not just equality for those of us who happen to live in this nation, but equality and justice for all people, no matter where they may be. Now, sometimes that is easier said than done. Sometimes it means that we find ourselves in conflict with what we would like to do versus what we have to do. But allow me to be clear, this is not one of those instances. The members of the Baha'i community who live in Iran have been persecuted for too long, for too often, by an atrocious and authoritarian regime for no other reason than the fact that they fear them. They fear what they stand for. They fear their ideas. They fear their belief. And this world should not have a single person, wherever they may live, persecuted because of who they are, for what they believe, or for what they stand for. I am incredibly privileged to have one of the houses of worship of the Baha'i faith in the area that I am honoured to represent. To say that the Baha'i faith is one of the great faiths of this world is no exaggeration. Their belief in unity, in peace, in love and in harmony. When during the COVID lockdown, so many of us were worried about what it meant for ourselves and for our families, the Baha'i faith undertook a project to understand what it meant for the entire community, not just their members, not just those who believed who were members of their community, but rather for our entire nation. It would be inappropriate for me to go through this speech without recognising Natalie Mobini, who is the Director of the Office of External Affairs, Shafali Williams, who is one of their External Affairs Manager, Dr Fiona Scott, the National Secretary of the Baha'i Association, and Mr Chris Heggie, who's the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'i of Australia. These people, along with so many others in their community, put together a program that involved and ensured that not only were their community kept together, but so many other members of the Australian community were able to make it through the isolation, through the challenge of the lockdowns and the pandemic. What would the Iranian regime have to fear from such a belief and from such actions? Deputy Speaker, you and I both know the answer to that. Authoritarians hate people who show that peace and love has a place in this world. It has always been, and thus will it always end up being. That is why what the member for Wills said is true. What we say here matters. What we do here matters even more, because we must make it clear that we will not allow people in Iran or in any other part of the world to be persecuted simply for the fact of who they are. Religion should never be used by any country as a tool of isolation, as a tool in which to persecute someone, to demonise that person, or to justify the unjustifiable treatment before the law. The right to freedom of religion, the right to freedom of belief, the right to freedom of expression is a universal human right that cannot be selectively observed or used by different governments when it suits them. It is part of the millennial program that all members of the United Nations signed up to, the millennial goals that we all signed up to, that we as a nation signed up to, and that the Iranian regime signed up to. They must be true to their agreements. The Morrison government, this government, the Australian government, continues to have a strong stand in support of a just, fair and legal treatment of all faiths in Iran, including the Baha'i community, but especially the Baha'i community, for they have been singled out too often.
The question is,